again this week, the indictments, and consider the indictments political persecution rather than actually upholding the rule of law.
So
We also talked about the election process in Georgia, and I reminded him that last year, Tea Party Patriots Action, along with many other groups across the state of Georgia, including Voter GA and nationally Cleta Mitchell's organization, which is now called the Election Integrity Network, we helped place 5,000 poll watchers in Georgia in 2022. And we intend to do that again in 2024. There are other people working on other aspects of election security, but we have to secure elections and win elections. And that's what I talked to him about.
Well, and talk about the election integrity, because we watched it here in our flagship city. We have Larry Sabato with the University of Virginia Center for Politics, and he talked again about how President Trump's issues are going to be regarding trying to overturn the election results in 2020, and it still is disingenuous from where I sit, because just asking to verify that every vote is an actual one isn't trying to overturn. If it winds up doing it, so be it. Then it deserves to be overturned. But just asking for the integrity of the votes to be double checked, the demagoguery of it, the way they just patently refer to any question about vote integrity as, insurrection, and you're trying to overthrow the election and unproven things, that really is bothersome from where I sit, and I'm sure it is for you as well.
Well, it's very bothersome, and it shows, especially when it comes to the state of Georgia. And right now, the state of Georgia is incredibly important because the Fulton County District Attorney from Fulton County, Georgia, has a grand jury out about the phone call you just were mentioning that President Trump was on. Under Georgia law, he had every right to challenge the election. He was within his rights as a candidate in Georgia to challenge the election. And that is what he was doing. And he was operating under Georgia election law, and he had every right to do that. The phone call was a phone call for settlement purposes, and it's my understanding that when you are in a lawsuit and you have a phone call for settlement purposes, you're supposed to be able to express yourself, even if you're expressing frustration, and that the call is supposed to be off the record, not recorded and then turned into a grand jury hearing. But there were very questionable things, and President Trump's lawsuit that he filed in Georgia outlined those problems very, very specifically, issues that there was evidence to back up, and the evidence was in the form of sworn testimony from people who signed affidavits, and those affidavits were submitted along with his suit in Georgia. So when they say things like there is no evidence of it, that isn't correct. There actually was evidence. The problem in Georgia is that he wound up not having standing because a judge who was supposed to take the case up immediately did not take, according to state law, did not take the case up immediately, let it languish. And finally, a judge was assigned to the case on January the 4th, or maybe it was Monday the 3rd, Monday, January 3rd. The electors voted on the 5th, and the case was supposed to be heard on Thursday or Friday of that week, not Thursday, but Friday of that week. And by then the electors had already voted, so he withdrew his case, but the judges played games and timed out the case.
Well, and that's one of the things that I think is lost in this, is that this is one of the things, again, Jenny Beth Martin from the Tea Party Patriots Action, that I think frustrates a lot of the regular people in the United States, is that these are all the manipulations of people who have been writing these eddies and currents. I won't even call them loopholes anymore. They're barely big enough to swim some amoebas through, but you have them, and they're there, and you can slow walk cases. You can you can bury somebody in discovery, and you can wait until deadlines pass and say, "Oops, sorry, too late." Statute of limitations, that kind of thing, and that needs to be cleaned up. For us to even feel confident in a judicial system, even if you are going to indict former presidents of the United States.
Well, yeah, it does need to be cleaned up. But the fact that, well, a couple things with that. First, the state of New York changed their law and extended the statute of limitations so that they could go in and indict President Trump in the first indictment. Mm-hmm. So they twisted their law to use it against this man, which is completely wrong. What happened in Georgia under the election law, and I don't remember the exact code number, but attorneys have told me that under the election law says that when an election case is presented, mm-hmm. and the law to challenge it is OCGA 21-2-522. So anyone who's listening to this can go look up OCGA 21-2-522. Who's legally allowed to challenge it. I have a friend whose election was challenged under that law in 2004, and she won by 4 votes. Her entire election was overdone, and we had to redo the election. So there's actually precedent mm-hmm. for overturning an election in Georgia. But what happens is the judge is supposed to, it says, shall immediately take up the case. And in my mind, now I'm not an attorney, and I'm just a common everyday person. Mm-hmm. But when I hear the word shall immediately, okay, maybe you don't do it at 7:00 at night and you wait until the next morning, but it isn't may, it's shall. That means you must. Right. And immediately doesn't mean, I could even grant, over the weekend, or maybe it takes a week to be able to get it up to the top of your docket so you can take care of it. But it doesn't mean wait it out over 30 days and run the clock out. That's completely illegal. And I don't understand for the life of me how the judges were able to do that. And Trump appealed to the appeals court and the state Supreme Court, and the state Supreme Court essentially said, you don't have standing to appeal because your case hasn't been heard. His case couldn't be heard because the judge wouldn't hear it. It's just circular logic. Well, that part should be cleaned up.
And to me, that's the part that really is frustrating to the average person. As you said, immediately generally means, if you were to get a summons from your local district attorney, Jenny Beth Martin on with us, if you or I were to get a summons from our local Commonwealth's attorney in Virginia or district attorney, and it says you will appear immediately, I can't wait until 2 weeks from Friday when it suits me. Immediately. It has a definite meaning, and I think that's where a lot of people feel like this interpretive dance that we're watching, even beyond President Trump's indictment, when it comes to Commonwealth's attorneys and district attorneys deciding whether or not to prosecute criminal offenses like robbery and burglary and shoplifting. This open to interpretation stuff, I think, has really become out of control in this country. Jenny Beth, do you agree?
Yeah, I do agree. I think it it's being used and twisted against the average person. You don't know what the laws actually are anymore in this country because they are at a whim of a prosecutor. And they can be twisted and not upheld. We have 2 different sets of law, I think, in this country, because if you're Joe Biden as vice president and senator and you had classified documents which you were not supposed to have mm-hmm. outside of a SCIF and you kept them in a garage in your house, you're not facing any charges. That's right. Okay. But if you're the former president of the country, one of the 45 men in the country who ever in our history has the ability to just declassify things by the office that the people elected him to, it's just absurd to me that they're going after him for these documents, and they're not going after Biden, and they didn't go after Mike Pence. And he actually had the ability to declassify the documents. Mm-hmm. It's absurd. It's wrong. And it is causing people across this entire country to lose faith in our representative democracy.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And that's the part that's the most dangerous to me, because as the economy falters, if we're not confident that the system can bring us out of it, that's when I think dangerous things start happening. And people who like to point fingers and call President Trump one thing or another, or even Barack Obama one thing or another, you haven't seen anything yet. If the economy collapses and we're this divided, Jenny, it can get very, very dangerous very, very quickly.
Well, it could get dangerous quickly, but I don't want to see that happen.
Yeah, me
The
either.
one thing that I think that President Trump and his supporters have going for him, and we need to hold on to this. We love this country. President Trump loves this country, and he wants what's best for the United States of America, and we all do. And we have the greatest country ever to be on the face of the planet, and we have to continue to do what is right according under the law in this country. Otherwise, if we don't do that, then we're violating the very thing that we love and cherish. What I urge everyone to do, when you get angry about what is happening to President Trump and you see this injustice in America, work to secure and to win elections in 2024. You have to vote and get everyone else to vote. And we have to vote so overwhelmingly that we can outvote any cheating that might be attempted. And then we also have to make sure that we continue to work to secure the elections by being poll watchers and poll workers. There are groups that are working on lawsuits and legislators who are working to change the laws. As individual citizens, what we can do is work the polls as an election official in the state of Virginia, or be in Georgia, it's called a poll worker, or be a poll watcher or an election observer, whichever your state might call it. Those are the things we can do as citizens, and we need to work to do that. So secure and win in 2024, and then we go attack the problems and get them corrected.
And you mentioned, work so hard. When you look at the Zuckerbucks scandal, just in a state like Pennsylvania, I think it was something, 70 to 80,000 votes for millions and millions of dollars spent for those, small smattering of 1 percentage point difference. Certainly in the Electoral College, it's one thing, but this speaks volumes to how many more conservative voices there really are, because that kind of Herculean effort, financially and human resource time, just to eke out a small percentage of votes shows you how much more voice the president's supporters have. You spoke to him. Do you sense that he is obviously he's aware and concerned and is going to work towards this? What is his mindset regarding how this could affect the primary race going into this debate in August?
Well, he showed polls during his speech, and every single recent poll shows him leading all of the other candidates. Here's the way that I see it. And our organization has not endorsed anyone. The way that I see it is that all of the people who supported President Trump in 2015, when he went down the elevator, and throughout the entire primary process and into the general election, and did not stray from him in October of 2016. And then they continued to support him despite Russia, and every single hoax and witch hunt that was thrown against him,
now proven,
and two impeachments. Those people, do you think that those people are going to be like, oh, yes, now that the corrupt Department of Justice and FBI indicted him, now I quit supporting him? It's just not going to happen. If anything, they're going to double down on their support. So I think that's a huge block in the Republican primary. And I don't know how any of the other candidates overcome that.
Well, and you speak about, when they see this and they sense this and they watch this go on, I know that the efforts are being done specifically to try to knock 1% off here, 1% off there. I mean, we're talking about trying to work off minuscule bits of the electoral, but as the Biden family laptop and all the other influence peddling schemes come to light, isn't the hypocrisy growing? Aren't they running the same risk of having this seen as just so completely double-sided and double-standarded that it could blow up in their face, Jenny?
Yeah, it very well could blow up in their face. It is such a double standard. And I do think at our heart, almost every American, you've got the people who absolutely cannot stand Biden, are never going to back off of that. And if he walked on water, they wouldn't even acknowledge that that's a pretty amazing feat that he might be able to accomplish. And you have the exact same thing with people who hate Trump. But then you get out of that, and the outside of the partisanship, and even within the partisanship, I think that most Americans want what is fair and what is right and what is just, and we don't like seeing people go through attacks unjustly. And they also don't want a double standard of justice. Now, the people on the edges might be okay with a double standard of justice, but I think even most of the partisans don't want that double standard of justice. So it very well could backfire. You've got all of the mainstream media on Biden's side, and they carry as water when they get on the news and report. So we have to find a way creatively to work around that and to get our messaging out and across to more Americans, despite the mainstream media and despite the bully pulpit that Biden has. And I think that President Trump uniquely has the ability to do that. He's proven he's been able to do that when he was a candidate in 2015 and 2016. And I think if he's not the nominee and someone else is, who is a Republican, they can learn from things Trump did and do the same thing as well.
What do you take from this? And you talked about being poll watchers and election workers, Jenny Beth, and it's so important to do that because that's where all the shenanigans go on. But some of the folks they approach with the attitude of like, all right, you're not the career politician. You haven't been in the Republican Party or the Democratic Party for 2 decades. You haven't been a precinct captain. You haven't been on the phone bank. So just showing up to volunteer, we don't want you. Johnny come latelys, help. Johnny's come lately, I guess would be the phrase. You have to steel your membership to that because there is an intractable partisanship that goes in, I think, in both parties. I think it's more so in the Republican Party where people will get riled up, especially since 2015 with President Trump, and they'll come and they'll want to get involved, and the people who have been involved for a very, very long time, they don't react so well to it. So give us some tools to help Tea Party patriots across the country and constitutional conservatives deal with that kind of rebuke, that kind of, you don't know what you're doing. You don't understand all the rules. Let us, who've been doing it a long time, continue to do it. Kind of what we saw in Georgia.
Well, let me tell you a couple things about that. When it comes to local parties around the entire country, almost every single local party is run by volunteers, whether they're volunteers who've been there for a long time or volunteers who are new to the process. It is run by volunteers. These aren't massive nonprofit organizations that have millions and millions and millions of dollars, especially not locally. So when you walk in, if you're brand new and somebody kind of treats you in a way that is off-putting, just remember they're a volunteer, you're trying to volunteer, and just say, well, what can I do? Teach me the rules. Tell me what I need to learn. Because oftentimes it may seem a bit territorial, but it also may be that they are just trying to help you understand how the process is supposed to work within the party. And there are rules within the party that are important for the party to function and operate. So just remember, though, they're volunteers, and if they're in your own county, they're your neighbor. You might see them at the grocery store, so treat them the way you would treat your neighbors. Beyond that, if you go ahead.
I thought also, as I listen to you, it reminds me also that a lot of these processes, and we've seen this before, where folks will come in and try to catfish local electoral officials into saying something or doing something that can get them in trouble. So oftentimes that
Yeah.
lack of what may be perceived as a lack of enthusiasm is just caution to make sure that the good intentions of somebody in an electoral office isn't being undone. Is that fair also, Jenny?
Yeah, that is definitely fair. I've noticed that I moved recently from Georgia to Florida, and the group that I'm involved in, they make you show your ID when you go into their
Mm-hmm.
local party meeting, just for a regular meeting, and they don't allow any recording at all. So yeah, that what you just said, I've seen that play out locally around the country, and those are the rules that they're just being cautious and they're being protective of their membership. And if you actually want to win elections, you have to understand that they're doing that because they don't want any harm to come to the party, because they also want to win. But with all of that said, and I think it's very important to be involved in the party, and there are a lot of people who work on precinct, precinct committeemen, the state. I saw President Trump at the Georgia Republican state convention this past weekend. That's why he was in Georgia, and he was giving a speech for that. So all of that it's very, very important. But if you're running into resistance with that, at Tea Party Patriots Action, we train people on how to get involved as poll watchers. If you go through our training in Georgia, we can help connect you so you can become a poll watcher in Georgia. We are working to have the same kind of program in place for Arizona and Wisconsin. But if it isn't us being able to train, we can connect you with the people who can do the training in Arizona and Wisconsin and other states around the country. And then when it comes to getting out the vote next year, we will have tools in place so that you will be able to work to get out the vote. So if you're running into trouble with them, there are other groups where you can get involved, and Tea Party Patriots is one of those places. For elections, it'd be Tea Party Patriots Citizens Fund.
And please join up. Please give Jenny Beth Martin, thank you so much for your time today. And I know it was short notice, and I appreciate you coming on with us. But when I found out that you had actually spoken with the president over the weekend, I wanted to get your thoughts on that. And I thank you very much for that. And keep going. Give the website again for everyone to visit.
It's teapartypatriots.org, teapartypatriots.org. And please, everyone who's listening and watching, do not lose hope. Keep your faith in America, and we're going to secure and win in 2024. And I would love for you to join us and help us do that.
Well, thank you so much, Jenny Beth Martin, and thank you all for watching as well online, and of course listening as well at WCHV.com. And thank you so much for being there. Until tomorrow, for all of us here at the Afternoon Constitutional, so long, and thanks for all the fish.